right, good afternoon, everybody. So this is a first. We are actually running ahead of schedule. Yay! Which is wonderful. But could we please ask our panelists to come on up on the stage? All right, so while everyone's getting on the stage, just sharing just a little background of what this panel is about. So as we know, the wealth of the corporate elites continues to grow. The divide between the 1% and everybody else continues to grow. And AAPI and Asian workers around the world have faced numerous challenges to their rights. For example, the right to organize, the right to vote, build political power, feel safe in our communities, feel safe to walk in our own neighborhoods, for our children to have resources for what they need to thrive and be engaged members of the community. And what is unique about APALA, though, is that we're not just fighting for AAPI workers' rights in the United States. We also understand that our struggle is part of a global struggle. And in APALA, we're willing to take a stance on those global issues. And not just willing to take a stance, we take the initiative to take a stance, right? And so this is a panel here of leaders in the United States and across the globe. Because as APIs, we know that our concerns, again, are both faced in the US at the center of global capitalism and into the lands from which our families come. And so through APALA, we are thinking about organizing in all of those areas. And at the same time, our struggles come from a centralized place driven by global corporate elite and capitalism. And so in this panel, we are asking our panelists to share specific examples of the types of rights that have been under attack for AAPI workers in their regions, and also how these challenges have affected working conditions and livelihoods. While we're facing struggles, we're also asking them to share the ways in which workers are organizing, fighting back, and giving voice to workers to build more power. So I am so thrilled. We have an incredible panel today, and there are very thorough, incredible bios in your program books. And so I really want you all to hear as much as possible from our panelists. So I'm going to give a very short introduction of each panelist, but I do ask you all to turn to your program booklets and read about them, because this is a really impressive group that we have here. So Joshua Mata is the Secretary General of Central, which is a trade union in the Philippines with 80,000 members. We have Osa Tui, who started his career in education in 1998 as a math teacher, but is now the president of the Hawaii State Teachers Association since July 2021. We also have Sabrina Liu, thank you, who is the president and co-founder of APALA's Pittsburgh chapter and has been serving on the APALA's National Executive Board since 2017. We have Peter Quell, in the middle here, and he is the president of the Drivers Union, representing 40,000 drivers statewide in Washington from Uber and Lyft. We have Justine Lim, who served as a Dream Fellow with APALA and the UCL Labor Center, and co-founded Empowering API, which is an organization dedicated to uplifting undocumented API voices and building community. And last but not least, we have Nadia Nisha Belkin, who is the first executive director of the Asian American Power Network. So we're going to just dive into the questions, because I think you all have so much to share that we can learn from. So the first question is for each one of you. Asian and Pacific Islander workers in various countries have diverse cultural backgrounds and experiences. Could you share specific examples of the types of attacks and issues facing workers in your regions, and how these challenges have affected their working conditions and livelihoods, and how are they organizing in response? So we'll start with Joshua.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Oh, come on, you can do better than that. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Hang on, let's try this. This is a Filipino way. When I say isang bagsak, everyone would bang the table all at the same time, and we've got to be organized. Isang bagsak! Perfect. You know, I'd like to start by saying that, just to remind everyone, that almost 4 decades ago, we kicked out the dictatorship, the Marcos dictatorship, from the Philippines. And that was my generation. And the slogan of my generation is never again. Never again will we ever allow anyone to be a dictator in our country again. And then we had Duterte. And then we had Bongbong Marcos Jr. You know? So what happened? I can go into an entire exposition on what exactly happened, but it's important, but I don't have the time to do that. So I just want to say that since then, since 2016, the Philippines has been placed on the map of the ITUC Global Rights Index, top 10 worst countries in the world for workers. Top 10, consistently, since 2017 until this year. So whenever Bongbong Marcos says, whenever he claims that his government has nothing to do with all the human rights violations that we had during the Duterte days, that's a false claim. That's really false. Unfortunately, and I think the powers in Washington, D.C. are starting to fall into that belief that Bongbong Marcos has nothing to do with the human rights violation that we had. It's completely false because the new president, Bongbong Marcos Jr., has not done anything to change any of the policies, any of the institutions that Duterte put into place when he was the president in order to repress our rights. So so if you ask me, what are the rights that are being violated in the Philippines? Well, the whole concept of human rights itself is being violated. Our trade union rights are being violated. Our constitutional right for security of tenure is being violated. All our economic, political, and social and cultural rights are being violated. The very notion of who has to have rights is being violated. Can you imagine? In my country, the previous president claimed that those addicts, drug addicts, including trade unionists and those who are dissenters, political dissenters, the previous government said, well, they're not human, and therefore, they do not deserve human rights. Do you agree with that? Obviously not. Obviously not, because you are APALA. But that's the problem that we're facing in our country. But believe me, we are fighting back. And with your help, we will continue to fight back. I'll end with that.
Aloha kakayaka and whaftai tele lava for having me here today. I am Osatui, President of the Hawaii State Teachers Association, he, him, his, and I'm also here with my NEA family there. I'll speak a little about Hawaii first, and then I'll speak more nationally. In Hawaii, we have a chronic teacher shortage. Generally, we have over 1,000 teachers out of about 13,000 that need to be replaced each and every year. And what do? We keep shipping them in. Normally, they come in from the continent, but they don't have roots in Hawaii. But now what's happening is we're bringing them in from the Philippines, and more, and the department's like, yay, we're bringing in all these Filipino workers. But they can only stay from 3 to 5 years. They're not able to establish roots into our communities, and so that's not something that's sustainable. Teacher shortages are happening throughout the country. People just don't want to go into the profession anymore, and it's no wonder why. You know, there are attacks on public education. We are the punching bag for the political right, who are saying things like, we can't have teachers talking about the truth. Don't say gay. You are not allowed to say gay to your students. We're gonna attack trans people. You know, we're gonna attack trans people, but you know what? We're gonna fund faith education. We're gonna fund private schools to make sure the separation between church and state is starting to fall. You know, when we talk about trans, and to be honest, some of the faith institutions have been more problematic for children than any of our trans educators. So thank you to them. You know, we have people like the former Education Secretary, Betsy DeVos, and all of her cronies trying to demolish public education, trying to get rid of the funding, provide vouchers, making sure, you know, let's take our public money and continue to fund private education so that public education doesn't teach what we need to teach, the truth to our students. To see that in Florida, our teachers are having to, by law, teach that slavery is something that they could benefit from. What the fuck? Okay? It is horrible. And then they claim that, they're teaching critical race theory. That is not. That is the furthest thing from the truth. To see the political right take things and twist them to their own political needs, it's just disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. Seeing books being banned, that is not right. To see, we're going backwards in this country. And it's, we used to be a shining star. I don't know what to say about the United States anymore. We have a radical Supreme Court that's getting rid of things like affirmative action. That's just disgusting. And so we are fighting back. NEA and our partners at AFT, we're fighting back, making sure that we teach the truth and making sure that we support our brothers and sisters in these red states that are going through these issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Justine Lim. I'm a bit nervous up here, being surrounded by such amazing people. I feel a little bit out of place, but I'm an undocumented Asian, Chinese, and Filipino immigrant. I immigrated here to the United States in 2005. I was raised by my single mother, who has worked as an undocumented worker, cleaning houses and working in factories, being the sole breadwinner of me, our small family. And immigration is something that is really important to me. I think as an undocumented Asian immigrant, I feel like our issues are very much invisibilized in the greater discourse of undocumented immigrant struggles. And for me, as a young organizer, I've tried to uplift my community, share our stories. Yesterday, many of you guys may have attended the Zine event that we had, which was this collective storytelling project created by undocumented API activists. And I think it's really disgusting how DACA has been attacked by the courts, and there's just been an instability in the protections for undocumented immigrants. I think states play a transformative role in combating harmful federal policies. States like California, who have been leaders in pushing for progressive reforms in states, pushing for in-state tuition, pushing for legal protections for undocumented workers who are highly vulnerable to exploitation in the workplace. So I think as young activists, we have a role in empowering and uplifting our narratives, especially as API undocumented youth, where we don't see people who look like us in these spaces, where the narrative is very much centered on, the US-Mexico border. But I feel like as API undocumented immigrants, a lot of us come here and on visas and end up overstaying, and our narratives aren't really shared. But through storytelling and collective action and pushing and organizing from the bottom up, we can push for reforms that improve the lives of undocumented immigrants in states. And yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Impala. Thank you so much. My name is Peter Quill. I'm so happy for the invitation. And I really thank the Impala and the team and my colleagues that are here. Life is not easy sometimes. We have to fight for it. Originally, I was a cab driver. I used to drive a cab here in Seattle area. And when Uber came in 2012, they take all the job. They move all the drivers that used to drive for us. And we remain with the cab with no driver. And here the insurance is $600 a month. You don't have that, you have to turn in. We run out of business and join the Uber. So for a 2 year, 2012 to 2014, things changed. The payment that we used to get that was good changed. Uber and Lyft reduced the price, terminated every driver. With the reason or no reason, you're gone. That was a big challenge that we faced during that time. And our pay went down. So that was the time that we see that this thing is going to be tough for us. As you know, cab driver, Uber driver, and Lyft driver normally are immigrants. People like you, people like myself from Africa. For that company like Uber and Lyft took advantage of us. And we searched for the answer, how to answer that was the one that motivated us to form the union. It was a challenge because seeing those companies know that you are trying to do something, they terminate you. Myself, my first thing, I speak with somebody I pick somebody up from here, from Seattle downtown here to Lake City Way that talked to me about the union. And right away when I dropped that person, I received a known call that telling me, don't talk to anyone. Don't talk to anyone. That was my first, okay, I see this. And that factor that motivated me that we have to have a voice. We have to fight, and we have to answer this. So in 2014, with many drivers, we mobilize ourselves. We say, let's turn off our phone. We turn off the phone and say, no work. That day, it was crazy. So many people come from the airport, from different places, need a ride. They don't have no ride because all the phones were off. But some driver just went there because Uber, knowing that the drivers are protesting, they put up their price high enough to pay more people. And they get some. And many people turn off their app. With that such, we build a coalition. Community members, different organizations, and we joined Chimichurch Local 117 to fight for us. That is when we start, and our first part was determination, the lowest price that we received from the company, because company take everything. When you ask them, they say, well, it's none of your business. You don't have to talk about that. It's our business because we own that car. We pay that insurance. We pick up the people. What do you do? Is just connect me with the rider. You don't have nothing. You know, that is our challenge. And we fight for that because many people make a suicide for the reason because they run into debt. Because you buy a car, $40,000. And after 1 month, you are terminated. What are you going to do with that car? Where are you going to take it? You divorce with your wife because of that. Because your wife advised you, don't take this money and buy the car. Now you are terminated. Where are you going? What are you going to tell her? It was a problem. Those were the challenges that we faced when we formed our organization, Driver Union. Now Driver Union is the most pay-raised drivers in Washington State, the most protected drivers in the country. We don't have this organization globally, not only in the country, but globally, we don't have such an organization we have here.
Thank you. Thanks.
And I heard our Congresswoman Jai Paul, I hope he's going to help drivers across the country, not only these drivers. Because I have been invited into several places to talk about how we made this, and they want to hear it. They need help from the people from the federal. Because now we're done with the state, we want this thing to be across the US. Because many drivers are not getting paid, are terminated, are going through a lot of stress through this. And thank you.
Good morning, all. My name is Nadia Belkin. I'm the Executive Director of the Asian American Power Network. I come from a labor household, so this is a very proud moment for me to get to talk to you all about the work that we're doing, and thank you, APALA, and to everyone at this table for opportunities for partnership and deeper conversation around the work. The Asian American Power Network actually is a real labor of love. It is a national network comprised of state-based 501c4s that serve the Asian American community. These are grassroots organizations that are on the ground trying to build power through base building efforts and through electoral work. The beauty in this is that we didn't see any configuration of the work that existed, so we built it. And just like the Congresswoman said this morning, it's about pushing boundaries. It's about defining and creating new opportunities and definitions of success. And so this network has really been built for us, by us, and for us to start talking about the issues that really matter in our community. I mean, you've heard the words that we're a monolith, we're invisible, we're fighting the model minority myth. But this is a network that allows us to really start asking questions about what does it mean to be part of the Asian American community? What does it mean to mobilize and invest in us? So as I'm sitting here listening to my colleagues, and I'm really glad to be in a space with you all, this Power Network actually is thinking about creating structures for alignment and strategy at the 30,000-foot view. And so what we're trying to create is actually an understanding around what are the issues that are facing our communities on the ground. We're active in 12 different states. Some of those include battleground states. Others include blue states, so places where we've seen progressive wins come to fruition. And part of the value of being in that network is thinking about the ways that we are in partnership with stakeholders like labor, ways that we're engaging our legislators to really create some institutional, cultural, and policy-oriented change. So a good example of this is that we're on the ground 365 days in places like Nevada. One of the issues that we heard last year was around access or lack of access to affordable housing. The way that the group then mobilized was to start talking to their legislators and create a policy agenda that had that at the forefront, because we knew that that's what our community really needed to be talking about. The way that that was facilitated long-term in terms of our capacity building and power building is we then brought AAPI community members into the Dome to start advocating and testifying on behalf of bills. So there's a lot more that I would love to be talking to you all about today, but as I'm hearing about these issues, it really is about bringing our community into the conversation about the issues that matter to them. How is access to education, access to affordable healthcare, access to safe working spaces part of their plan to be empowered in their community? The way that that happens is through partnership. Our groups are on the ground 365 days, engaging voters through different tactics. And we don't have to think about it politically, but we're knocking on doors, we're on phones, we're trying to create community spaces where our community can start talking about how, why, and what is impacting them. So I am very excited to be in conversation around what comes next for our community, the way that we bring our community into the conversation, and the way that we start building policy and changes that actually put AAPIs at the forefront of that change. Thank you.
Good morning, APALA.
Morning.
I'm Sabrina Liu, United Steelworkers Union and founder of the Pittsburgh chapter. In the past few years, what many of us in this room right here have seen and felt is an uptick of anti-Asian violence in the United States. And the way that Asian Pacific Islanders workers respond really is just education, conversation, organizing. So APALA created the labor toolkit on anti-Asian racism about how we can build workers' movement that is truly inclusive of all workers. And some of the toolkit is really just stating the obvious, right? Like collecting disaggregated API data of your members, right? So that we can be seen, we'll know who folks are and start to understand the issues. And some other parts of the toolkit lay out very concrete and specific steps for folks to take. For example, sample contract language that can bring about more inclusion in the workplace. But the core of it is really about having uncomfortable conversations to break down what the many faces of anti-Asian racism can look like, and also talk about and explain the sometimes unintended impact, but harmful impact of our actions and words. And the toolkit came out in 2021, but many unions, even this year during the Asian Pacific Islander Heritage Month and other times, are still holding workshops, webinars, talking about this. And so I encourage everyone to take a look at it and think about how you can also continue these conversations with your local union, with your international or national union, and your Central Labor Council and State Federation.
Thank you, Sabrina. All right. Is this resonating? How many of you have seen or experienced yourself anti-Asian hate in some form or know someone who has? Wow. Yeah. And how many of you know about repressive governments and the actions that they're taking, not just globally, but that impact us here in the United States too? Yeah. It's happening, right? And teacher shortages, I mean, as an educator, everything you said resonated. So, but is everyone aware about what's happening to public education and how banning books, banning curriculum in Florida, that they wrote into the curriculum that slaves actually had benefits and learned skills? That's what's happening to public education right now. And these are all symptoms of democracy in trouble, right? This is what happens before democracy starts to fail, right? So we know that, again, all of these issues have actually already existed, and they're being exacerbated for lots of different reasons. But one reason potentially also is the pandemic, right? And so can you speak just briefly, maybe just a minute each, about how COVID-19 has further illuminated or exacerbated the inequities and disproportionately affected our vulnerable communities, including APIs?
A
Joshua.
minute. Okay. But my few seconds does not count, right? Well, we have been suffering long-standing problems like low wages, precariousness of work, unemployment, and many other issues, including highly privatized public services. Pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, what it actually did is that it laid bare all the inequities that we have in our country, where those of us workers who doesn't have their own, who doesn't have the capacity to purchase commodified health services because it's so expensive, are left to fend for ourselves, while the rich can actually take care of themselves, purchase all the necessary services that they need. So that's what the pandemic created for us. It exposed the inequities of the country.
Yeah, and just briefly, in education, similar. The inequities definitely came to bear. The haves were able to get the technology that they needed to do what they could. The have-not didn't have the technology. Or when they had the technology, a lot of the students didn't have the internet access in their homes to be able to do. Or they had multiple children in the home. Or they had, they were told you have to turn on your camera, but they're not in situations where they wanted to turn on their camera. And so the loss of learning just continued. And now when we saw kids coming back to school, they weren't able to readjust. A lot of fights were breaking out. A lot of students were not able to come back to where they were. And so our teachers are used to getting what they get and trying to work with them as best as possible to get them where they need to be. And it's a long road to get back to where we were.
During the COVID-19 pandemic, I think undocumented workers were left out of a lot of the COVID relief packages, unemployment, these stipends to help us get on our feet. And I remember during my junior year at UCLA, my mom, who had worked at a factory, her factory had shut down for a couple of weeks because of low production. So she was late. She was off work, but she was an undocumented worker, so she couldn't receive any unemployment benefits or anything like that. So she was left out of work without any income for 2-3 weeks while I was in my junior year. And I remember, because I was receiving some financial aid from UCLA, I would send her some money, and like my brothers, my sister, we would all kind of like pool in from our resources to support my mom, because there was no safety net for her as an undocumented worker. And I think the COVID-19 pandemic further exacerbated that for a lot of our undocumented community members, who really create the backbone of our economy. Those people on the ground, those people, making our food, those people, the farm workers who are in the fields, who are, working day and night to support like our economy and to support our food and sustainability, and they are not cared for. And it was really difficult. So that's how COVID affected.
Thank you. Thank you. I believe COVID-19 is one of the kind that was terribly, terribly bad. And I pray this COVID-19 should not happen again. It was really tragedy. During that time, drivers Uber and Lyft and taxi cab driver, they rely on picking up people from the airport, from the hospital, from home, from workplace. That is what they do. And picking up somebody that you don't know, you never know, you may have a COVID or not, because you can't see the system of it, and you can't deny anybody. It was very, very tragedy, sad for drivers. What we did during that time is working with the state. So we are helped by the union, Timothy Local 117, that was helping us when we started our union. And we were able to get some unemployment for them. I think we're the first state also for the drivers to get unemployment because we are a union, because we work all together. Our being together as a union was one of the best that helped our people here in Washington State. I think it's unimaginable to think about the COVID-19, but most drivers that were working before were able to get some kind of employment. As you know, Uber and Lyft drivers are called independent drivers. Normally, traditionally, they don't get unemployment. But with the support of our community and the union, we're able to get some unemployment for the drivers. And some, they can, because they don't have a record of working. It was a challenge for them. And the most challenge is just the person you're picking up in the airport may come along with the COVID. You take somebody, everything is fear. One of the things that was made
Thank you. I just want to make sure we get to the last two speakers, and then we're going to get to the individual questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So for us, COVID-19, really laid the inequities out for us. It also allowed the racism that we have faced to to have more visibility. What I think it did for us in the positive, though, was allow us to show that grassroots organizations and having people on the ground in community can really be the ones that provide the services and build trust. So our groups were the ones that were helping connect our community members to services like food banks, access to mental health, vaccines. And the real critical component of this is it was done in language and through a culturally competent lens. So there was a moment of true visibility and support that was created in that moment. That is now leading us to be able to do our work on the C4 side, which is the express and direct advocacy. And what we also saw during COVID-19 was some direct asks to our elected officials to step up and do something, right? The community was being impacted. It was on the front lines. It was the violence and crime was happening. It was a moment for us to be able to turn the tides and say, here's the community that's being impacted. We will give you the stories. We will give you your voice, but we're asking you for partnership to create some policies and protections for us. And so I think it's a relationship that's it's ongoing in communities and at the federal and in the legislative spaces. But I think it was a moment for us to really show up for our communities and show that you don't need to look externally. We actually are building what you need for you and by you.
So the pandemic really created challenges, but also turning point, and show the difference, the drastic difference between workers who exercise their collective power and have a voice on the job versus workers who don't have that power. So here's my example of opportunity and wins. So in my work at the United Steelworkers Union, where I work with members in United States and Canada in industries ranging from general manufacturing, rubber, paper, steel, mining, healthcare, a lot. We've seen workers reversing two-tier systems that's meant to divide the membership and hurt our solidarity and have great contract wins in their bargaining. I see people nodding, right? Raise your hand if you made some wins in the pandemic. Yeah, it's incredible. But on the other hand, with my volunteer work at Pittsburgh chapter about workers' rights and immigrants' rights, mostly with undocumented immigrants in settings like restaurant, nail salon, where it's very difficult, nearly impossible for people to have union representation, and many Asian workers are very exploited. The pandemic made that workplace power imbalance even more complicated, just because one way or the other, in many cases, bosses step up to take care of their employee in some way. So that reinforced that idea of like, we are a family, quote unquote. It made it so much harder for people to speak up about violation of their rights and to create collective power in the workplace.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to move to some individual questions. I'm going to mix things up a little bit. We're going to go to you, Nadia, first, all right? Sorry, I feel like I'm in a classroom. I'm cold calling people now.
I tried to prepare for the test a little bit.
Great. So we are a little short on time, so I'm going to just ask individual speakers just to speak maybe for 3 minutes for each of these questions. But as the executive director of the Asian American Power Network, can you speak to the political power of AAPI workers in the U.S. and how you work to address long-term power building? And what are some of the key issues or attacks that are driving AAPI workers to the polls? And this is really important for APALA because in our chapters, a lot of the work we're trying to do is get AAPIs to vote, to get engaged in the political system. This is a big challenge for us sometimes. So what is some advice, what can we learn?
Sure. So I realize you probably are thinking, like, how is a national organization sitting at this table and why? And so to the heart of your question, we are really trying to hold at the 30,000-foot view an understanding of what are the issues that face our communities, what is coming at the community, and how are we building offensive and defensive strategies around these issues. So we've heard about issues with immigration, issues in the classroom. These are all issues that matter to AAPI voters. And when people ask me what is an AAPI-specific issue, that's the wrong question to be asking. The fact is all issues are AAPI issues, but we're not being talked to or engaged about it. And so that's actually where partnership really comes to bear for us. So when we did polling last year and we asked people what were the top 3 issues that were of concern to you, they said the economy, jobs, and inflation. But in particular, when you looked at the economy, it was and jobs, it was access to paid family leave. So that's where we are looking to forge partnerships with entities like labor so that we can start to foster a relationship with our community. We need to know the specific policies, the framework, and the vocabulary of what's at stake for our community. So SEIU sent out a mobilizing effort around Starbucks workers, right, here in Seattle. That was an opportunity for us to connect our voters to the ways that workers' rights are on the line. We are trying to connect our voters with the issues that matter and start to talk to them about what's at stake. Another way that we're doing this is just having our community engage with labor. During the midterms last year, we forged a partnership with SEIU 1199, who actually bussed in-language Cantonese speakers into Philly to start talking to our voters about ways to build strong relationships with labor. So the way that we're also thinking about doing this, and I don't know who was able to join the panel yesterday on organizing for 2024, is about having a sustained and engaged conversation with the voter. What makes the groups on the ground and the groups in our network really unique is the fact that we're on the ground 365 days a year. This is not us just showing up in November saying, hey, can you vote for us? It's about talking to our voters. Thank you. About the ways that the issues are going to impact them. Let us talk to you and educate you on what's at stake. Let us bring in the experts and partners. Let's work with NEA to help figure out how we build recruitment for school boards. Let's start forging those relationships so that we are talking to the voter for the long term and they understand what's at stake for them. The other key component here is that we're trying to do a lot of work in language. Our outreach is happening on ethnic media channels. It's happening in multiple languages because we know that there is a power of talking to our people and meeting our people where they are. And so we are starting to see a cultural change in that regard. And I do also want to acknowledge the fact that this work is cyclical. We're going to keep building each cycle. We're moving at the speed of trust, right? And so, I think we are trying to really build infrastructure for the long term that allows us to have a conversation with the voter. They can ask us questions, they can ask us the why, and we can provide them with the information. And so you did ask me about the issues that matter to us. It's about job security, it's about paid family leave. We are really starting to hear more questions about access to reproductive care. And education is starting, opportunities for higher education. Affirmative action, we really don't want to be used as a pawn in that conversation, so we're starting to think about our offensive and defensive strategies to really mobilize and empower the community.
Thank you. All right, let's go to Justine. So, from the injustice you and your mother have experienced as undocumented workers, and through your passion for immigrant rights and labor advocacy work that stems from what you experienced, can you tell us how that has influenced your approach to advocacy and organizing, and maybe speak to the intersections that you see?
Yeah, so like I mentioned before, a lot of my passions and involvements now really is rooted in, my lived experience and my childhood growing up, being raised by an undocumented Asian worker, and seeing her struggle because of her status. And I really questioned, why was this happening to my mom? Why was she experiencing all of this? And as a child, you really don't understand that. So it really led me to pursuing law and trying to understand the legal world, because I wanted to understand why my mom was going through all of this and why the conditions were the way that they were. And I'm really inspired by the work that states have done, I think particularly in California, in pushing policies that protect undocumented workers in the workplace, which is something that I think growing up for me in Pennsylvania, we didn't have protections for workplace safety for undocumented workers. When I was a senior at UCLA, I did an internship at the California Labor Commissioner's Office, where I got to work with undocumented workers and to look at their claims and see what they were fighting for. And I was shocked because I didn't know there were legal protections for undocumented workers, because they didn't exist in Pennsylvania. And I wondered why California had these laws, and it's because of the organizing, people on the ground pushing for these policies, and then state enforcement agencies like the California Labor Commissioner's Office enforcing those and going out into the communities and educating our community members on what these laws mean and how they can exercise their workplace rights. So for me, my approach to advocacy and organizing is really rooted in community and empowering our communities to take action and pushing for those policies that support our community and protect our undocumented workers.
Thanks. Thank you, Justine. All right. I'm going to go to you, Peter. You also have an inspiring, I think, individual story. How we do know that rideshare drivers are disproportionately immigrants and people of color. So can you tell us more about the diverse experiences of your coworkers in showing up and organizing, and how did you decide that this is what you needed to do and get involved in organizing?
We understand that the freedom is not given. You have to fight for your right. That was the tool that we used, that nobody will give us the freedom. And we have a slogan at the union that was not created by us, but we got it there when we joined the teams, the local 117, is that when we fight, we win. If you don't fight, you keep silent, you're not going to win nothing. So you get to fight for it, and you get to keep on and on and on. Many people drop, and many pure people keep on. When you keep on, you get to win it. It was a challenge for us. And now, drivers in Washington State, at the highest page, across the country, are protected under the law that you cannot be terminated. Across the more people that protected are Washington State, drivers get a benefit like unemployment, family and medical leave, and also workers' comp in case you get injured during the work time. Those are things that we get. And it will be good for drivers in other state or work it in any other place to keep on fighting. You get a fight for it. And you cannot fight today and win it today. It's a long term. You know, you get to keep on and on, like I said earlier. Sometimes you can be terminated. It's okay. Before you get this job, you were leaving. You know, you will still do another job too and keep on it. I think this is my encouragement, and these are the things that people should work on to, you know, to continue not giving up for anything. I know drivers in California, in New York, in Chicago, those are the big cities, you know, it's still under threat. You know, they don't get no pay, they don't have those protection, they don't have those benefits. They need to keep on fighting on that. I think that is the first thing that I will encourage, and that is the motivator, you know, that these are your people, and this is also you. This is all of us. It's not about one person, you know, that we have to encourage. And also, the union across, if you know drivers are suffering, you need also to support them. Don't leave them alone. Give them some encouragement. What advice you have, give it to them. They don't know what to do because they are immigrant. They don't know anybody. We need to support them. All of us, not me alone, all these union members, we need to support the workers so that they can improve themselves. And thank you.
Thank you. So what I hear you saying is solidarity. Sabrina, we know that over the last few years, there's been an increase in anti-Asian hate incidents in the U.S. Can you tell us about that and how you've organized through APALA and your union to come together to combat that?
So after the targeted shooting and murder of 8 people in Atlanta in 2021, and after the shooting in Monterey Park and Half Moon Bay, one of the first things we did in Pittsburgh was getting people together for solidarity rallies. One of the lead organizers is actually here at the convention, Phoebe Palacio. We learned de-escalation, yay, Phoebe. We learned de-escalation techniques from our Black and African American siblings, and we lean into our multiracial coalition that we do economic and racial justice work with, and got a diverse group of people together and just invite people to bring in their big feelings. And union leaders show up in solidarity. I don't know about you, but in my union, we joke about that our typical union leaders are male, stale, and pale. That's what we say. So think about it for me, like your typical male and stale and pale union leader, right? Who are not even used to opening up meetings with like community agreements, right? They do Pledge of Allegiance, that's it. But was standing there for grounding meditation with Reiki and singing. And it was so small, but such an important step for people in the labor movement, leaders in the labor movement, to see the diversity and culture in our API community and hear about our struggle that we face and listen to our needs and our vision for a better future. And then time goes on, and we got into, you know, the thick of voter engagement and mobilization last year. And so my partner, to give you all some context, if you don't know my partner, Aaron, he's a cisgender white man watching news or, you know, video on his phone and looking at me, like doing mobilization to turn out people to knock doors, right? And he freaked out. He just like looked at me and said, I don't know about this. Are you sure you're gonna do this? You know people get shot from knocking doors and with all the anti-Asian American violence, but you're going to canvass? And I'm like, yeah, exactly what you said. And so we had one Asian community group that had never, ever participated in civic engagement ever. They turn out people, and it's a bunch of first-time volunteers. And for that to happen, I held so many meetings, like talking to people on Zoom and on the phone to explain what even is a text bank or phone bank, what does it mean to knock on door, what do you do when people are rude to you or being super racist to you, right, to get people out of their comfort zone. And last year we had 92 volunteers and we had more than 400 door conversations. And I was shocked. And the most memorable part really wasn't, just numbers, but it's this one day after our canvassing day and 30-some volunteers after, you did dispatch training, everybody got a packet of 100 doors. So they're already putting 4 to 5 hours on a Saturday, but people came back and stayed. A room of mostly Asian American community members were just chilling there, sipping on bubble tea, and catching up with old friends or meeting people that they don't know before. And we were building community. And that's how we organize and how we combat anti-Asian violence, because we keep us safe. And we have the collective power to fight for what our communities need to thrive.
Thank you, Sabrina. All right, Joshua, and come back to you. Earlier, you'd said that workers in the Philippines are fighting back. Well, can you share a little bit more about how they're coming together to fight the global expansion of corporate greed?
Okay, thank you. Well, just to go back a bit, since 2016, just to give an idea for everyone, since 2016 to July of this year, 69 trade union leaders have been murdered in the Philippines, and not one of them received justice. Hundreds have been red tagged, and I don't know if you know what that means. In my country, when you are accused as an organizer of a terrorist group or a communist group, it's actually a death sentence. All the 69 trade union leaders who were murdered in my country started out by being red tagged. And then it escalated to being harassed through messages, text messages, and then being visited in their homes. Eventually, they get killed. No, so that's the context that we're operating. But despite suffering from one of the worst periods of trade union repression in the country, I'm really happy and I'm really proud to say that the trade union movement was able to hold out and push back. And this is very highlighted during the time of the pandemic, where, like the experiences that we've heard here, it was also an opportunity for us to work together, because not only are we suffering from poverty, from being hungry, where we started developing, having our own community kitchen to feed everyone in the community, but we also started banding together because pandemic was also the period when the government was trying to, impose on us the anti-terrorism law and other atrocious policies, including, for example, phasing out entire livelihood of jeepney drivers, public transportation drivers in the Philippines at the time when we were locked down. Maybe, perhaps the government thought that because we were locked down, the labor movement will not fight back. Well, they were wrong, and we proved it. We fought back, not only online, we fought back and held rallies, even if it was prohibited to hold rallies because of the excuse of pandemic. So we just made sure that we all had masks and we are physical distancing, but we had our big rallies, and we fought back. But one of the key ingredient that we had was that, you see, in the Philippines, the trade union movement was patterned, the labor relation system was patterned after the US. So it's bad. But think about your labor relations and make it worse 2 times, then that's the situation that we have. And one of the things that we have to face is the fact that many of our trade unions are actually fighting each other. Sometimes we have much more energy fighting each other than fighting the real enemy. But now, because of an atrocious government and because of the pandemic, it forced us to work together. And that was the key. And I'm happy to report to everyone that for the first time in 30 years, now that's a long time, that's the time that I'm in the labor movement in the Philippines, we have accomplished trade union unity from the right wing all the way to the left wing, all working together. Now the problem is, I know I'm out of time, but just 30 more seconds. The problem is we need to keep this, our unity together, and that's the biggest challenge for us. And what we need to work together is that we should prevent all our sectarianisms from rearing its ugly head, so that we continue working together. But we still will continue to fight, and we are hoping that you can help us, and you can do that because you are in the heart of the empire, which you, whether you like it or not, is impacting on what we're doing in the Philippines. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joshua. All right, Osa, you knew you were next.
Yes, I think I'm last.
Teacher shortages and retention are challenges faced by many educational systems, particularly during the COVID pandemic. So how does the Hawaii State Teachers Association work to attract and retain highly qualified educators, and what measures are being taken to address the underlying factors contributing to these shortages?
Thank you very much. As a teachers union, what grounds us is the work that we do on behalf of our students to make sure that they have the best education possible. And part of that best education possible is making sure that we can recruit and retain teachers. As you know, Hawaii is heavily tourism dependent, and through the pandemic, when the tourists stopped coming, we were facing furloughs, we were facing pay cuts. It was going to be a disaster. Thankfully, there were some federal funds that came in, so we were able to avert that. But then when planes started to fly again, people wanted to go somewhere, and they weren't able to go internationally, so they all came to Hawaii. And suddenly, Hawaii had this amazing pot of money that we were able to do. And so it was incumbent upon us to take advantage and make sure that we got what we could to make sure that we could recruit and retain our teachers. And so we were able to just finally secure a 4-year contract with our state government. Our emergency hires are what fill in the gaps when we can't fill our teacher positions. We were able to raise that from $36,000 to $50,000 as a starting pay. So that is going to help. For such a long time, our pay was not aligned to our years of service. I had the same amount of service as someone that had like 12 years less than me, and we were making the same amount. And that was ridiculous. And so what we were able to do was fix that as well. We were able to take, the top had 400 teachers with the top pay. We were able to raise that to 2,700 teachers with the top pay. So it was great. Yeah. We were very happy about that. And all of this, now teachers are saying, I'm going to stick around because I want to make sure my pension, and so that's helping because we have those teachers that have the greatest experience being able to stay. We also implemented things called differentials, especially for our neediest students. Nobody wanted to go into special education, and so what we implemented was a $10,000 differential for special education teachers, and teachers came, So it was great for our special education teachers. We have a differential for what's called Hawaiian immersion teachers. Hawaii has the greatest percent of, in fact, we're majority AAPI in Hawaii, but many of our students are suffering. Our Native Hawaiian students are at the lowest rung on the totem pole. Oh, I shouldn't use that term, I'm sorry. The lowest rungs in Hawaii, I apologize. And, so what we did is we did money to work in those communities. We did differentials for those communities, differentials for if you work in Hawaiian immersion. We want to make sure that the language of Hawaii stays. And so a teacher who's teaching in an immersion program, they don't have readily available, you can't just buy something off the shelf, you have to translate everything. And so they were taking books and they had to take extra time to translate all of those things. And so we got differentials for those. And then also we got differentials for hard to staff areas. If people on our coasts where the Native Hawaiians live, teachers didn't want to live there. And so that's where we were shipping people in, and there was just constant, you'd see a new teacher all the time, Mister, you going to stick around after this year? Oftentimes the answer was no, and that was problematic. I know I'm out of time, sorry, but one of the other things on a national level is that now teaching has become authorized to be an apprenticeship program with the Department of Labor. And so now we can get something we haven't been able to do before, and we're working on it, and all states, I think, are working on this. One of the barriers to getting teachers in was student teaching. You had to give up your job, you couldn't make any money, you had to just devote a whole semester or more to student teaching. And that, for those that couldn't afford it, sorry, I can't become a teacher because I can't afford to be a student teacher. And now with the apprenticeship programs, we're looking at being able to make it paid apprenticeships so that people can get paid to do this and come into the profession. And that's really what we need. Thank you.
All right, so we are at the end of our panel, and you are in a room full of API activists and leaders and labor workers. What is your advice on how we build transnational solidarity. We are not a monolithic group. We have very unique needs, but we also, as you all shared, need to come together to fight together and win, right? So you have 30 seconds each to share your last piece of advice for your audience here today. We're going to start with you, Joshua.
Well, first of all, you have to recognize that what you do has so much impact in any place that you're going, simply because you're in the heart of the empire. So that's important. But having said that, I think it's so important for APALA when they work particularly in a country like ours. I think it's important for you guys to work with all the groups, the warring groups, if you like, so that you can actually contribute to the unification of the labor movement, and not just work with one section, because that would only deepen further the disunity in that country. So be very sensitive, work with everyone, and trust the labor movement that you work with, that they are your sisters and brothers, and that we will fight for a better world with you.
I think part of it is what we heard yesterday, is that we have to elect the right people. We have to get rid of these people who are trying to work against the labor movement, trying to make it so that we don't have careers. One job is enough, right? So that's my thing. Elect the right people.
For me, I think definitely supporting API undocumented youth in your classrooms. If you guys are teachers, if you guys are unions and organizations, work with organizations like the UCLA Dream Resource Center in hiring undocumented youth. And also, I think supporting campaigns that can create effective change in the lives of undocumented immigrants. Campaigns like the Opportunity for All campaign that started at the University of California system that actually just passed and now is being implemented at the UC level, which provides employment opportunities to undocumented students regardless of immigration status. And this is a huge win because DACA students, because DACA is an unstable program, it's temporary, and it was never a forever thing, and we need to provide these opportunities for students to live and have a livable wage and to be able to work safe conditions. And a lot of the exploitation that occurs to undocumented workers is as a result of these legal employment opportunities. So having that safe employment route for undocumented students at the UC is the first step to creating, models of that in other states and other systems across the country, which can create, the system that can support our undocumented workers and our undocumented youth.
Thank you. My advice to all activists, whether you are a workers' activist or human rights activist or anything you do, don't give up. Don't give up. And call your friend, call your brother, call whoever who can help you to come and support you. And that is how you organize. Coalition is a big thing, that when we work together, we win it. And when we fight,
we win.
Thank you.
I think the thing that I would lead with is the grassroots knows best. The power and the innovation lives there, and I think we just need to be really explicit about that. I think the top-down idea for projects and policies does not work, so really just being explicit about where that innovation, where the work happens, and where the actual knowledge of the community is critical. That's one. Number two, let's create spaces for us. We should not be an addition to a budget or a line item or an agenda. Let's create spaces for our items to be discussed first, and it should happen, I think, in cross-racial spaces. And last but not least, in order to build power, we need to talk about the issues and we need to bring the issues to the people. Education is our biggest tool for empowerment for the long term.
Join APALA's next Organizing Institute training. That's what we need. Or even better, your union or chapter can host the next Organizing Institute so that folks in your area can attend in person, because we need people, we need API workers who are culturally competent. We need people who understand workers' rights and unions, people who speak a language other than English, people who can have one-on-one, effective one-on-one conversation to move people into action to grow this movement.
Thank you. So, I hope you all have been inspired by our panelists. Can we give them one more round of applause? And before our panelists leave the stage, or actually, if you'd like to leave the stage, you can. But I don't want to hold you captive up here. But you know, this panel really exemplifies the work of APALA and what we are about, why we exist, why we have to fight, why we have to organize, right? And as the treasurer of APALA, I would be remiss if I did not take this opportunity to really make an appeal to you all. Our work takes resources, it takes funding, and we need help right now from all of our members to make sure that this work can continue.